So today I'm not going to review the Rings of Power because, well, I haven't watched it. But I have been watching a lot of reviews of it, and I've been watching a lot of the surrounding discussion with a great deal of amusement. But it dawned on me, the scenario that we're seeing play out is a great example of another tool, of another method we have to push back against the woke, globalists, leftist, whatever term suits your fancy. You can argue terms forever. But the authoritarian creep over our own lives, of which this union, this alliance between big government and mega global corporations who seem tireless and unstoppable in forcing us to live in the pods and eat the bugs. And one of their big tools is corruption of culture. Now, in pushing back against authoritarianism, I've narrated a book called Dictatorship to Democracy by a guy named Gene Sharp. And, he discusses individuals that have overcome far greater, more tyrannical governments than we face now, and far more competent and evil dictators than the puppet that we have standing before us today. And his big argument is dictators get their power through institutions and the subordination of those institutions and enforcement of the dictator's will through those institutions. Now, institutional power appears monolithic, but institutional power is full of holes. If the institution withdraws its support from the dictator's will, then the dictator's power is weakened. Their ability to enforce whatever their goals are diminishes and eventually can collapse entirely. Take, for example, the current situation with the FBI. You have a very corrupt set of leaders at the top, and they're raiding Mar-a-Lago, and they're sniffing Melania's panties. And it seems like, wow, the whole weight of the FBI is coming down against half of the country right now. I forget the exact statistics, but it's like 2/3 of Americans believe the FBI right now is Joe Biden's Gestapo. That's pretty intense. But what else do you see? You're seeing rank and file members. You're seeing people within the FBI undercutting the leadership by leaking news stories and things to the news that undermine, that undercut that narrative being put out by the leaders. And so you have an inter-institutional warfare between the leadership and those still loyal to our republic. And so what Gene Sharp argues is that through institutional power, either through counter-infiltrating existing institutions, say like the FBI, or if you're a police officer or a teacher or whatever you do for a job, you can defend the republic from there, or creating new institutions or institutions kind of outside of their control. Say you're a church. Say you're a little old lady and you have a knitting group. Well, you can sit in your house and knit little mittens for your grandkids by yourself, or you can create a knitting group and you and 5 little old ladies are sitting there and you what do? You talk. And you go, well, my son John is struggling to find work. And another little old lady says, well, my son Aaron is looking to hire someone. What's he do? You have built a community outside of the power structure, outside of the control of the oppressive establishment, and you're helping each other out at the local level, helping provide financial support, helping find work, or whatever is needed. I need help cleaning my roof this summer. Now, this concept, I think, is actually leaking through into the mainstream consciousness, and it's becoming fairly well understood. This is why you're seeing more, we'll say, I guess, conservative parents taking over school boards because they don't want their kids being taught a bunch of woke crap and being forced to watch drag shows when they're 5. People have really grasped the idea of institutional infiltration, of recapturing institutions. It's been the impetus for a lot of grassroots action. Now, I say all of this to point out that I have become aware of another tool that can be used, one that's just beginning to show its effectiveness that I don't think people are taking full advantage of. And it's called audience capture. I watched a very interesting video by the channel on YouTube called After School, It's called How Influencers Become Brainwashed by Their Audiences. The story starts with a 24-year-old named Nicholas Perry who wanted to be big online. He played the violin, he was a vegan, and those were his passions. So he started putting out videos and he wasn't getting a great deal of traction. And then eventually, because of health reasons, he dropped his veganism and was free to eat what he wanted. And so he was posting videos about this, and his viewers began pushing him to eat more, go bigger, eat more disgusting amounts of food. And so he did what got him the views. He followed the views and began stuffing his face until he was this gigantic fat kid. And it's a really sad story, but it shows the power that the audiences have over the content that they're watching, the pressure they can exert. You want to keep getting my view, you better eat like 10 Happy Meals. And so going back to our talk on institutional power, Amazon is this tremendous global institution. I mean, they even own Washington Post so they can pump out their own propaganda to make themselves look great. The Rings of Power is a $1 billion production. It seems unassailable. They're coming to wokeify Lord of the Rings. They're going to destroy all your heroes. They're going to do to it what they did with Star Wars and every other franchise that they've corrupted and made really lame. And yet something happened that they did not expect. In many ways, their strength is actually their weakness. If you're going to invest $1 billion into this show, you need to attract a huge audience. And while they claim they had 25 million viewers, there are some sites that posit that the views were as low as 600,000 an episode, which, if true, is a disaster. To top it off, Tolkien also has a hardened fan base unlike anybody else. The work is so complex and so nuanced that there's literally hundreds of channels put up by people that analyze every detail in exploring that legendarium, and they don't like to see it warped and twisted, even in minor ways. So when something comes along that's a total abomination or contradiction, they lost that hardcore fan base right off the bat. And that fan base began pushing back hard. They made thoughtful videos explaining what was wrong. They broke down the characters, the action scenes, the history, and the criticisms were landing. Galadriel is a Mary Sue, and you're actually seeing mainstream publications putting out articles recognizing this fact that, man, you might have made this character too overpowered. She's unlikable. She's unenjoyable. This whole woke feminist agenda that they were supposed to maybe subtly push smacks you so hard right in the face, even ordinary people can't enjoy it. They're like, don't like her. In the original Lord of the Rings and the Peter Jackson trilogy, it took the entire team to take down a troll, and everyone took an injury, and it was a group effort, and it was a big deal. And then you have this character just walk right through one with little to no effort. It's really hard for people to get into. So I would make the case that what we're seeing with the reaction as the entertainer class thrashes about, they're trying to defend what they've created, and they're also turning back and attacking their own fans. You can see this fan blaming bingo. You're just toxic fans. You're a racist. It's been updated for modern audiences. Well, take your pick. But attacking your own viewers is a pretty bad strategy to get more views. I think what you're seeing is an early stage of a case of audience capture, where the influencers are those that would dictate to us what the social norms are and how we're going to view things and how we're going to act, and this is the stories we're going to tell. And you're seeing an audience that, because there's so many channels, because there's so many communities, because there's so much dedication and love to the source material, rather than being told from the top down, this is what Tolkien is going to be, you have a grassroots action that is forcing Amazon to change, because the criticisms of channels like Nerdrotic or The Critical Drinker or the myriad of others against modern movie making and modern television have been so cogent, they've been so accurate. And this is a technique that can be extrapolated outward. This isn't just something that can be used to, say, course correct on the story writing of Lord of the Rings. Who knows if it can be saved? I doubt it and don't really care. But this is an example. This is a template on how the audience can actually recapture their own material, their own movies, their own culture. Do you think anyone's going to dare put out another $1 billion pro-feminist Mary Sue production anytime soon? I don't know. Maybe they're pretty stupid, but go woke, go broke. Make it hurt. And these communities are what makes it possible, because the communities, well, are kind of like rings of power in themselves. They amplify the voice that an individual has. It's like the little old lady with the knitting group. Rather than knit alone, knit with a group. Rather than criticize, say, the production of something you don't like by yourself, build communities. This is the strength of communities. This is why globalization always tries to atomize the individual. This is why they attack the institution of marriage. This is why they try to break up the nuclear family. This is why they try to get welfare moms that tell them they can have it all, and you can have the kids and the alpha male and the career. They want you so worn out, so isolated, and so exhausted that you can't put up any form of resistance. And while the nuclear family is the most effective way of creating a self-reliant society, these voluntary associations you make are very powerful as well. And so while the culture seems to be swirling the toilet, and that Hollywood and whoever is producing content is putting out an endless swill of just trash for us to drink, this effective pushback on the rings of power is showing us that we can save our culture if we stay true to each other.